Hey guys, welcome to Mandy's Not So Small Talk, and I'm your host, Mandy. And today I want to talk about something that honestly rearranged how I see my own healing, because I realized that I actually been working on the wrong core wound for years. Okay, it wasn't the wrong one, but it wasn't the core wound. It was a wound. It was a real wound, but sometimes our limitations and our woundings can come in like onions. They have layers, but that actually ended up being a symptom of my actual core wound. It wasn't the root. Okay. So for a long time, I actually thought that my wound was abandonment. That was the language that I actually had for my pain. So people leaving, people pulling away, people not staying consistent. So I did all the work around that: self-soothing, self-parenting, learning how to be there for myself. And yeah, that mattered and that was great. And that absolutely taught me a whole lot and brought me a lot of healing still. But there was something inside my body, like I just couldn't put my finger on it, something I couldn't release. And I didn't know what it was. Like I understood my patterns mentally, but my nervous system still braced. And so I actually was frozen in areas of my life. And I just, I couldn't figure out why. Because I thought like I had done all the work on the wound, like I knew the wound. And I thought, I did all this work about abandonment. And I just, like, why is there still stuff there? So what's interesting, part of me, is that this realization actually didn't even come through a relationship reflection. This actually ended up coming through my business. And because I started stepping more fully into my coaching work, hosting, speaking, inviting women to connect, I noticed that there's something that didn't make sense. So, you know what? I could show up publicly all day. I could talk about my work, my experiences, my frameworks. And when it came time to initiate, to actually reach out to someone directly, that means like sending DMs and actually talking to them to book the calls and actually to move from the invitation and over into the actual relationship stage. My body, like I froze, and it wasn't anxiety. It was just freeze. And it confused me because I believe in what I do. So why couldn't I just go into that next step? Why couldn't I just initiate? Then I came across a list of these emotional blocks tied to actually something else that I was doing. And there was just a list of possibilities of why I was feeling a certain way. And on that list said betrayal. And when I read that word, I was like, oh, I didn't actually think it. Like I felt it in my body. Like my system actually went there. And then I knew immediately that this actually goes deeper than abandonment. Well, I actually thought it was so funny because I thought if it was betrayal, it would be abandonment. But this new realization came through that the abandonment that I was doing to myself was a result of the betrayal wound. Because what I really looked honestly wasn't just that people were leaving. Because to be honest, like I've always been independent and I'm cool with being independent. It was more that the trust was being violated. And betrayal, it often starts early, where your body learns that closeness isn't safe. It learns, that trust is exploited, and power overrides your consent before you even understand what is happening. Okay. That wires something deep. It wires closeness to danger. It wires vulnerability to loss of control. And it can come from a parent leaving, if your parents were separated, or maybe your parent was there physically, but they weren't able to be there emotionally because they're going through their own stuff and they actually hadn't healed. Or we could have been watching them give their attention, their energy, or protection to another partner instead of you. Now, it isn't wrong for them to give that to another partner, but let's say if those needs were not being met, and instead they gave that to another partner. Now, if they met those needs and gave that to another partner, that's healthy. But if they were putting their time and attention on the other partner and you weren't getting your needs met, that is something else, okay? Because that actually does something to a child's nervous system. You as a child, starts taking in programs, these limiting beliefs. And the one who's supposed to protect you, they're emotionally unavailable, or maybe they're choosing someone else. And what you learned, it's not that, people leave. You end up learning that, hey, I'm not protected and my needs come last or don't matter at all. Or maybe your parent had such high needs that you didn't feel like you wanted to burden that parent with your own needs because you saw how unsettled they were. Okay. So what do we do when attention is scarce? We might end up fawning. We people please. We become easy. We don't want to be a burden. And we say yes when our body is actually saying no. Yeah. So you know what that feels like. You know when you don't want to do something and you do it because you don't want a negative reaction. That is you saying yes when your body says no. Because at one time that actually kept us safe. And we didn't learn that it's safe to say no, it's safe to disagree, right? And what ends up happening is you fracture trust with yourself and you betray your own body to preserve that attachment. And then that becomes pattern. And later, it shows up in their relationships. And I want to talk about, I've reflected and I'm like, okay, I've initiated romantically before. I've reached out. I've been vulnerable. And I've been ghosted. I've been ignored and dismissed. And it hits different and stonewalling because there's no closure. There's no conversation. There's no explanation. And that's different than, someone have given you an explanation and they're not willing and they keep going and going and going. But if someone's just completely ghosted with no conversation, no explanation, your nervous system, it doesn't process it as not aligned. It actually processes it as like I disappeared and no one acknowledged me. And it makes you feel completely erased, like you don't even exist. And that really is really painful and it hurts. It's not rejection, it's erasure. Okay. So, like, you extended your nervous system and then it was just left hanging midair. And now take that same nervous system and then you ask it to initiate in business. All right. To reach out, to lead, to hold authority. So, of course, it freezes because outreach uses the same circulatory as the romantic initiation. So, you extend first, you risk first, and you expose first. And then the other person decides what happens next. So if they don't respond, if they ghost, if they maybe choose someone else, you absorb the impact. And so my system said, oh no, we're not stepping into that position again. But really, another layer ended up surfacing. And this one was more prevalent, that there's power dynamics, okay? So leadership, it involves power. And if power has ever been used against you, holding power feels unsafe. So because then these fears start rising. They could be like, what if I disappoint them? What if they blame me? And what if they actually reject, or sorry, what if they regret choosing me? And so that last one, that's the deepest cut because that's not fear of rejection. That's fear of actually being chosen and then turned on, chosen, then criticized, chosen, then blamed, chosen, then devalued. So success itself it feels dangerous because being trusted feels like emotional liability. And so I had to face the belief underneath it. So if someone chooses me and it doesn't go well, I failed them. So that belief will paralyze leadership fast because now you're not guiding, you're carrying responsibility for their outcome, their feelings, and their projections. And if you've been blamed in relationships before, your body says, we cannot survive that again. So it freezes execution before you even start. So then I had to look at where I was betraying myself now, because betrayal isn't just what others do to you, it's what you do to yourself daily. And it can be subtle. And what it looks like is saying yes when you really mean no. It looks like tolerating disrespect to keep the peace. And it looks like shrinking your voice so that you won't be rejected. It looks like overgiving so that you won't be abandoned. And it looks like taking clients you know aren't aligned because you fear scarcity. And it shows up with money, undercharging because you don't want to be judged, over delivering because you don't trust your worth. It shows up with your voice, diluting what you really think so that you don't trigger people. And it shows up with your body, ignoring exhaustion, pushing through depletion, not listening when your system says stop. And it shows up at home too. Overextending when you feel tired, not asking for help, carrying emotional labor alone. And for me, avoiding reality. So, like choosing things that I want to do over, say, housework, for example. Not because I'm inspired, but because I'm avoiding grounded responsibility. Well, I am inspired too, but I didn't do the responsibility part first. Because things like housework anchors you in reality, or like doing my reach out calls. I'd feel my nervous system dysregulated, and then I'll choose to, figure something else out that I have to do besides that. When in reality, I know I need to do this, and then I would feel better doing that. Because that anchors you into reality and anchors you into structure and anchors you into maintenance and adult life. So when other areas feel overwhelming, creativity can be a place to hide instead of express. So, you know what? I'm owning that. I still want it to be a part of my life, but there's a healthier way for me to do that. And because self-betrayal, it isn't just relational. It totally lives in the mundane. It lives in dishes, lives in finances, it lives in follow through. Every place you override and avoid grounded life. So I started realizing maybe abandonment wasn't the root wound. Maybe betrayal was, because abandonment says, you left me. And betrayal says, you hurt me when I trusted you. And betrayal breaks something deeper. It breaks trust in others and trust in yourself, your instincts, your no, your authority. And I think this conversation matters right now collectively too. Because we're watching betrayal surface globally. Abusive power, exploitation, silent systems protecting perpetrators. People aren't shocked because it's new. They're actually reacting because it confirms what the body already knew. Betrayal, it leaves a somatic imprint individually and culturally. So if you feel frozen in your life, your business, your voice, before you label it fear of success, maybe you can ask yourself, where did the trust break? And where did power become unsafe? And where did I learn that being seen comes with risk? Because abandonment, it heals through connection. But betrayal heals through rebuilding stubbornty and trust in yourself. And I want to end with this. If anything in this conversation brought things up for you, if you feel deeply hurt, triggered, or aware of wounds that are affecting your life in adverse ways, just please reach out to a therapist or someone like that. I'm not a therapist, but what I do is different. I do help women who are in a grounded enough place to work on the behaviors that are impacting their relationship with their body and themselves through the bridge of health and fitness. So, if that resonates for you, you can reach out to me. And I have posted my website link underneath, and we can arrange a no pressure call just to see where you're at and whether you would be a fit for my one-on-one coaching program. Because I know that this program is really benefiting the lives of many women. And I just want to start with a conversation. There's no pressure. Just reach out. Thank you for watching. And if you like this, please like and subscribe. This will help this get out to more people who this could really maybe shed a light on what they're going through, and it could offer healing to them. So your like would actually help the algorithm, and your comment, I enjoy reading them. So I love interacting. It's what gives me energy back. I enjoy it, and I do read the comments, and I take them in seriously. So until next time, you'll see me in the next video if you like and hit that bell notification button just so you don't miss any one of my episodes. Have a wonderful day.